Welcome all to Plutus IAS. Today we are going to discuss about the NCERT's chapter. We have taken up the series of NCERT. Previously we have discussed some of the chapters of class 6th, and today we will be discussing the most important parts of class 7th, which are going to be really helpful in your UPSC preparation. So let's see what is important in this. So the chapter that we have taken is our environment. You will find this chapter environment in any of the NCERT, whether you are referring to old or new NCERTs or any other material. So the components of environment. The first topic we are going to take is component of environment, which is a very important part of this chapter. So how you have to determine components of environment? First of all, understand that components of environment you have to categorize in a broader way. First is abiotic and next is biotic. Okay, biotic is a living, anything which has got something with life, anything which has life is categorized under biotic component, which we call it as living, whether it's plants, mammals, animals, microorganism, anything which is having a carbon present in it and has a life, it's going to come in the biotic component. What is abiotic? Which is not having life. For example, sunlight, water, air, they do not have life, right? So we categorize it under abiotic. So what is this? Abiotic and biotic. So you can categorize in the natural form. Understand, all of them are categorized in the natural form because they all are natural. Living organism, whether it's the air that we breathe in, all are under natural. So the first categorization that we have taken is natural, under which we have land, we have air, we have water, which we also call it as lithosphere, atmosphere and hydrosphere, and living things are called as biosphere, right, where we are living in. What do you mean by biosphere? The life existing above the land and below the land, right? This all is categorized under biosphere. Now there are components of environment which are human made, right? These are artificial, for example building that human have created, and different other assets that human have created for their own advantages and utilities. For example, bridges, parks, buildings, roads, etc. Now humans are also forming a very important part of it, right? So categorization that we have done, the biotic, abiotic, right? Next we are going to come with the natural environment. I told that natural environment is something that is existing, right? Before the existence of the earth, what has come? The main components which are helpful in the existence of the living organism. For example, what is the most important part? Oxygen, right? Oxygen is the most important part of the living organism, right? So land, water, air, plants, animals comprise the natural environment, and lithosphere is a solid crust. So first we are taking is the land, right? Lithosphere, it is constituting the most important part, okay, and it's made up of rocks and minerals and covered by a thin layer of soil. Okay, so the first thing that we have taken is lithosphere, biosphere and hydrosphere. I'll be explaining you all of them one by one. So the lithosphere consisting of crust and hard top layer of the earth, it is made up of rocks and minerals, and by the thin layer of soil, it is irregular surface with various landforms like mountains, plateaus, etc. It is a domain that provides us forest, grassland for grazing, land for agriculture, etc. Now next is hydrosphere. The first is lithosphere. What do you mean by lithosphere? Okay, so the first is a natural component. The first thing that we are taking is lithosphere. Then there is hydrosphere, and then atmosphere. Okay, in lithosphere what we are taking, you have to understand, in lithosphere we are taking the land, how the land is constituting of, किस चीज से बनी है land, right? The upper layer, the upper layer of land is crust, right? So crust is an important component and it is made up of rocks and minerals. For example, Sial. What is Sial? Silicon plus aluminium. Next we have what? After lithosphere, and here only what is happening? Here only you have a very important thing, that living organisms are constituting life. Above and below land. Okay. So land constitute crust, and above the crust we have soil, right? Soil is there for the important agriculture purposes, right? Therefore, we have to understand that how land is giving us lot of utilities for grazing, agriculture, for the consumption of the humans, for the survival. Therefore, the soil is very important, which is there on the land. And how the land is constituting of, the top layer of the land is known as the crust, which is the topmost layer, right? Topmost layer is crust, and it is constituting of silicon plus aluminium. The next we have is hydrosphere. What is hydrosphere? It is ocean. So in how many forms the ocean is consisting of? I mean the water is consisting of? The water is consisting of, we think that if we are talking about the hydrosphere, we are talking about only oceans, but that is not the case. We talk about hydrosphere or water in every form which is existing on the surface. For example, whether it is consisting in the form of ocean or lakes or rivers, even ponds, precipitation, glacier, groundwater, all are the forms of what? The water, right? This is what we call as the hydrosphere, right? Next we have atmosphere. What is atmosphere? Atmosphere is also having the different layers. The one which we are living in is the troposphere, right? The troposphere, in which the atmosphere, the layer of atmosphere just above us is troposphere, right? After troposphere, what we have? There are layers of the atmosphere, okay? These are important, right? After troposphere, we have stratosphere, okay? Right? This is how we have the layering. Troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, ionosphere is a part of it, then thermosphere and your exosphere, right? This is how the categorization of atmosphere is. Now, next thing that we need to understand is biosphere. How is biosphere? Biosphere is where the living organism, for example, what is living? The plants and animals, both living species, plants and animals are existing together and constituting life on the planet Earth. Okay, so we will be reading out the NCERT's line. So domain of the water is referred to as hydrosphere. It comprises various sources. I have discussed all of the sources with you, and atmosphere also I have discussed is a thin layer of air that surrounds Earth. Now what is keeping the atmosphere here? It is a gravitational pull which is keeping the atmosphere just above the Earth, okay? And also there are some layers, for example stratosphere, which prevent us from the very harmful ultraviolet rays of sun, which is the stratosphere. Stratosphere is having what? It is having ozone layer which is protecting us from the harmful ultraviolet rays. If ozone layer would not have been there, then there would have been lot of repercussions. Okay? What is ecosystem? This is also important point in the NCERT of this chapter. Now it reminds of what ecosystem is, that how they are coexisting together. Okay, so all plants, animals and human beings depend upon their immediate surroundings, right? So ecosystem is where all of them are living together, right? Whether it's the humans, whether it's animals, all of them, when they are creating a ecological balance, then we'll call it as what? Ecosystem. There is a ecological balance that has been created, right? For example, I'll give you example like this. If humans would all have been there and there would have been no atmosphere, then do you think humans would have existed? Or maybe atmosphere and humans are there, but there is no water, no water, no hydrosphere is there. I am eliminating this hydrosphere from it. Do you think then the possibility of life would have been there, or maybe the ecosystem would have been created, right? Or maybe if I am eliminating lithosphere and keeping hydrosphere and atmosphere and humans, then also it's not important. It's not possible for all of them to exist. Now we have created a kind of a balance where we require all of them in certain amount to keep the balance. Of what balance we are talking about? We are talking about ecological balance, so that life can continue. Therefore, what is required? Every component is playing an important role, whether it is atmosphere, hydrosphere or lithosphere, right? All of them are making the perfect balance, so that what is existing, life is existing and it is sustaining, right? This is what you call it as ecosystem. Now next part which is important is human beings interact with the environment and modify it according to their need. Yes, definitely, when we interact with the whole system, then we change it to our utility. So for example, if we think that this is important and this should be in a particular way, then we try to modify it. Early humans adopted themselves, natural surrounding, they led a simple life and fulfilled requirements. Now this is important, but this is more important from your writing part. When you will writing the mains part, this is more important from that, okay? For the mains understanding it is important, but not for the prelims. Now I would also like to tell you that back exercise question of NCERTs are also important. So do not miss this important questions like what is ecosystem, what do you mean by natural environment. At least go through them, or maybe take the correct answer, match the following. This will give you a sense of understanding that you have understood the chapter very well, and then you can practice this question and also try to understand that whether you have got the concept clearly or not. Thank you so much. I'll meet you in the next lecture with another chapter. Thank you.